92 million tons of fabric waste ends up being discarded every year. Well, what's the most sustainable way of doing this?
Do you think that going to work for a startup requires like a different skill set to if you were going to work for a bigger organisation?
Bringing in people who've worked in the industry for 10 years, they've got 10 years more experience. Our aim is to be the most sustainable apparel brand in the world.
Rory, welcome back for part 2 of the Ambitious Minds podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. It's great to be back, and it's great to do it in person.
Absolutely, mate. And you're in London as well for some awards, I think, at the moment, aren't you? So maybe you could just start by telling us what you've been nominated or won.
Yeah, so on Tuesday night, so it's Thursday today.
Yep.
Days merging into one. We went to the Santander Growing Business Award, where we won the Santander Growing Business of the Year. What was interesting about that is we won the Santander Growing Business of the Year under £2.5 million turnover, which when we were nominated was correct, but we've quickly stripped that number. I won't say what it is, but it's more than that now. So a little part of me was like, it's a little bit unfair because we're in this category with other people where we've kind of pushed through that. So, I mean, that's just a sign of growth, right? But that was pretty cool winning that. And then Friday tomorrow is the Sports Business Awards, which are awards I've been to plenty of times before when I've worked for companies and stuff, but never had my own company nominated. And we're nominated for Sustainable Business in Sports of the Year and Best Business Serving Sports. So that's pretty cool, and it'll be great to catch up with a lot of friends in the sports industry.
Yeah, and I think when we last spoke, it was probably around February time, March time. And I imagine a lot has changed in the last year. You've probably had quite a successful, as you said, your revenue has now exceeded that number. So has it been a successful year for Reflo?
Absolutely, yeah. It's been an incredible year. It's been a year that just the momentum doesn't seem to have stopped all year, and it's still continuing. So yeah, lots of incredible things have happened since we last spoke. I mean, since we last spoke, we were probably a team of 8, and we'll finish the year as a team of 30.
Wow.
So yeah, lots of new faces in the door, and actively recruiting others as well as we speak, which is super exciting. And yeah, I mean, every side of the business has grown in that period of time, which is all you can hope for.
What areas of the business do you focus on employing staff into? I'd love to understand this part actually, because as somebody who doesn't have a business, when you are saying, okay, the business is going well right now, let's start to try to grow the business. Mm-hmm. Strategically, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Where should you put your resources?
That's interesting actually, and the logical part to say is sales. But actually it hasn't been the case. We still just mainly deal with inbound, and trying to scale the business to cope with the level of inbound has been our main focus, which is a great thing to say. And when we do eventually go hardcore out selling to the market, then I'm sure that will change. But we have almost all sides of the business have grown. So partnerships are a big side of the business, and I think we'll talk about some of our partnerships coming up today. So that's a growing side of the business. So we've reinforced that team. But if you consider there's your partnerships team who deal with the partners, we're a business that essentially sells apparel. So you then have to have the team in the background to be able to deliver everything from design, source, work on the sustainable innovation. So the product team has grown massively. The operations team is something that we're really focusing on in general operations. It's interesting that when at the start of the year, when there's 8 of us, we all kind of knew what was going on in the business because there was 8 people, and there's a WhatsApp group, and everyone kind of is chatting away, and then you get to 30 people, and you realise that you need to find ways to make sure everyone knows what's going on frequently. And we're a fully remote business, so that's got its own challenges. So yeah, I'd say operations has been a key, and we've brought in an absolute superstar of a guy called Eugene, who his job is internal operations. It's not external, it's not shipping, logistics. It is making sure that all sides of the business work with each other. We've got the right processes in place, we've got the right tech stack internally to do that, that there's the right SOPs in place to do that, and then delivering on layer on top of that of objectives and KPIs for every single person within the business. So we're kind of like optimizing. And so whilst there's bringing new people in, there's also optimizing what you have already. So he's an optimizer. And then, yeah, we've brought other people in like HR, which we haven't had before, which is super nice. Finance, some kind of sales roles as well, but mainly dealing with the inbound. So yeah, almost everywhere is the answer.
So is this like the symptom of going from a startup into like that sort of scale up or like mature business now, where it's not the WhatsApp group that you're communicating with your staff. Now it's about how do we run a business properly. We need to have like, what's your title, for example? You're the co-founder.
Co-founder.
Yeah, CEO, COO or something?
No, and that's a real interesting conversation we've had, myself and my business partner, of like, neither of us call ourselves the CEO. We're just two co-founders.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we talked about this last time, but we're two best friends, right? We went to school together, we've known each other since we were kids. And we have completely differing skill sets, which is mad as two, like, best man at his wedding. People describe us as two peas in a pod, but you only really realize when you start working with someone, and we didn't know this at the time, that we both work in very different ways, but in complementary ways. You know, he loves nothing more than, being at his desk in front of a spreadsheet, looking at cash forecasts and that level of detail. Whereas, I prefer being in a room with people, talking about what we're doing, going and networking and telling the story of Reflo, which I think he loves doing, but is probably less his absolute sweet spot. So between the two of us, we kind of, I don't know, would we co-CEO? I don't know. There's not even been that conversation really yet, but it works, and it means that I cover marketing, brand, product, kind of the more creative side of the business, and he is very much over operations, logistics, finance, HR. And yeah, that means that kind of we have a natural breakdown of who reports into each of us, but we make every decision together. And in fact, it's a bit weird. We don't really even need to make decisions together anymore, because he'll say, I'm going to do this, or I've just done this, and I'll go, yeah, cool, that was the right decision to make. And it's just very natural. Like, yeah, cool. Obviously we disagree on stuff, as you do, but we don't disagree we'd never have an argument about it. It would just be like, I think this, I think that, cool, let's discuss it. We discuss it, and we're both big enough and ugly enough that one of us will go, actually, you're right, you crack on. And we do that all the time. So
that's healthy.
Super healthy. And everyone says, don't go into business with your best mate. And I think we kind of realized at the start we'd probably be okay, but you don't really know until you do it. And we're probably, as close as we've ever been. I mean, he's more like a brother than a best mate, but there is nothing that we wouldn't say to each other. Yeah.
And it's funny enough, I saw a LinkedIn post from somebody recently where he was, the conversation was all about solo founders or co-founders. And his point was, co-founders are a must. Like any business that's going out there to investors, for example, and raising capital, it is highly likely that the investors will want to see a co-founder on board. However, it also, for some people, for a lot of businesses that fail, usually the co-founders or multiple founders is one of the reasons why. So having different skill sets and probably not being too similar is probably the sweet spot, I would say. But I sort of want to go back to that, the way that you're hiring and creating structure. So you've got sort of two essentially CEOs at the top, the co-founders. Mm-hmm. Over this last year, that as the business has grown and you've added more people, are you trying to create those layers in the business to give it more structure and more, like you said, for example, Eugene, you brought on board, is now like the operations person, mm-hmm. But are you trying to create more structure within the business? Yeah, absolutely. I think, structure is a must, and reporting lines are a must, and you can't be too flat. And I think when you're starting out and you're small, we hired lots of manager level people, because manager level people are great at just picking up workload and getting stuff done. But we probably got to a stage where we were too flat, and there was too many people reporting into Pete and I, and there were too many decisions that we were having to make every day, which meant that we weren't optimized or weren't growing the business, because we were just focused purely on decision making. So there's been an active effort to put heads of departments or director level people in. So we've got marketing director, head of product, head of operations, which is Eugene. We've just hired a new e-com lead who's going to take on everything related to the website, and hiring a kind of one of our first ever employee is now our partnerships director. And he's gone from coming in as a partnerships manager and just absolutely smashing out the park. So Stephen is a fundamental part of where we are today. So, he's taken that step up, and we've built a team underneath him. So yeah, there has to be that, because otherwise I think we're very good at making decisions quickly. It's one of our superpowers of being able to go, right, this is what we need to do, let's get it done. That becomes harder the more people you have. But when you're constantly just making decisions, it means that you're not focusing on enough else. So yeah, definitely building structure, and giving people autonomy, and bringing people in who know more than us, which is actually, it's not
I say that everyone who's come into the business knows more than us, and we don't come from this background, so we doing things in a different way. But actually, bringing in people who've worked in the industry for 10 years, they've got 10 years more experience. Well, we've got 3 years of experience between us now, but bringing in people who know their stuff and listening to them, because there's no point bringing in great people and then say, no, you need to do it that way. It's like, how do you think this would be done best? Where's it in your previous jobs been great, and where's it been terrible? And if it's terrible, let's not do it. And if you've got a great way of doing it, then let's discuss it and see how it all works together. So yeah, but bringing in great people, and I think that's the only way you can scale. I don't think you can scale without that in place.
Yeah, but also empowering them to be able to suggest changes, to implement ideas, to sit there and say, Rory, the way that you're doing this at the moment compared to my old company doesn't really make sense. Like, can I try this, or can I go ahead with this? And do you allow them the autonomy to go ahead, say, do you know what, yeah, let's see how it looks, or let's go away and do that?
Absolutely, yeah. One of the key hiring kind of processes that we put in place is asking people, are they prepared to put that process in place? Like, you may be coming into a role where the process may not be fully optimized just yet, because we're a scale up and we're doing it a certain way. We want you to put your hand up and go, actually, I think we can do this better. Yeah, that's music to our ears. When someone does that, we're like, yeah, we love that. That's brilliant. Do it. Yes. Yeah. I mean, if it works, then we stress test it and make sure it works. But yeah, that's really part of this, like, optimization and growth at the same time, is you've got to optimize as you go, and you need people to be willing to optimize and be looking at process rather than just doing things because it's the way it's done.
Do you think that going to work for a startup or an earlier stage company requires like a different skill set to if you were going to work for a bigger organization?
100%. And it's not for everyone. And we also say this to people in the interview process, like, someone who's spent 20 years at Nike probably isn't the person to come in and work for Reflo, because they're used to having 15 other people around them who do similar jobs and this, and they've got their, and for some people that's great. Some people want to go to work, know exactly what they're doing, do their job and do it really well and ace their job, and they're super competent, and they are fantastic in an organization of 2,000 people. But you put them in a startup and they're looking around going, who's going to do all these things? And it's like, you are. So yeah, it's a completely different mindset. And for some people it works fantastically, and we stress that point, as it may seem glamorous going to work for a startup, but it is hard work, and you will be doing things that you probably thought you'd stop doing 10 years ago in your career, but you'll also be doing things that you're like, wow, I didn't think I'd be doing that. So yeah, it takes a certain type of person, and some people absolutely thrive in it and others go, no, this isn't for me.
Have you had anyone so far that hasn't thrived and said it isn't for them and they've gone elsewhere?
Yes, we've had not many, and actually we brought someone in as a consultant to in a role with an aim for them going full time when we were in that growing phase, and they're quite a senior person. We probably in reality couldn't afford, but we weren't at a stage to afford their full-time salary, but they were very open to coming in like 2 days a week, and they'd just come out of another job and they were like, yeah, I'll come in 2 days and then we can look to scale it up. And after a period of time, we could see that they were a bit overwhelmed, and it wasn't a surprise when they said, I'm going to go and work for a big company again. And we're like, cool, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Good luck. And no hard feelings. Like, it's not like, and we were actually super grateful that he worked that out pretty quickly, and I think we'd almost both worked that out, but kind of super grateful that he was super transparent with it, and we didn't get a year down the line and he was going, and then he went, no, I'm going, and he was super embedded in everything we do. It was at an early enough stage where it was not a problem.
Yeah, that takes a lot of humility to be able to recognize that, but and then to walk away, because probably that person was sitting there thinking, it hasn't worked out as I expected, that's a failure on my part. But actually, it's not really. If you say, do you know what, I tried that, I wanted to go somewhere a bit more entrepreneurial where I had more responsibility, but it didn't really work out. And I think that one of the things that I'm trying to encourage with the podcast is it doesn't matter if you go and try something. For example, when you started Reflo, if it didn't work, then you could have gone back to your job. You could have gone back to employment, for example. But it's about having that confidence and the humility to go, do you know what? yeah, fine, and just take it on the chin. It's almost like rejection. Like
And in fact, nothing actually went wrong. There wasn't like a physical moment where we went, this isn't like, that didn't happen at all. It wasn't this, there was no like, oh my God, this has gone wrong. It was just, maybe this isn't quite right.
Yeah.
So it takes the self-awareness to realize that. And it wasn't, as I say, there was no drama behind it. There was no conflict. It was, when he said, I'm going to go and do this, we were like, cool, like good on you, and we get it, and maybe this isn't quite right for you. Who knows? It was still super early days. He could have gone on and been, the absolute superstar. But it was good to, identify that early and go, maybe not quite right.
Yeah. So for people that are listening and maybe hadn't heard the first episodes, do you want to introduce Reflo? Now, I wear this on quite a few episodes, actually. So I'm a supporter. This top I'm wearing now is from the Midnight Sun series that you did. But maybe you can just give a bit of background into what Reflo is and what you do.
Absolutely. So we are a sustainable performance wear business. We make performance clothing, so clothing that you can work out in, go for a run in, play golf in, play paddle tennis in, and our aim is to be the most sustainable apparel brand in the world. So our North Star metric is always, what is the most sustainable way of doing something? We make all of our clothes from recycled waste. We plant a tree for every product we sell. We have no single-use plastic in any of our packaging. It's all biodegradable. We carbon offset our workforce. I could go on forever and ever. There's millions of things that we do, but we're all about sustainable innovation. We've just developed something called Reloop, which is end-of-life solution to clothing, which is currently in our mainline range, but we're extending to partnership range, which we can talk about later. Really our focus is to create the best product out there that's also sustainable, because it's no good if it's sustainable and the product doesn't perform well. So we're all about performance. And if you dive right back to the very beginning of how we initially came around, it was my best friend and business partner Pete, who I've mentioned. He was working for a company that made drinking water, and he found that he had a bit of a juxtaposition in his head. The better I'm doing at my job, the more single-use plastic gets created. And he found a company that could take unlimited amounts of waste plastic and recycle it. And he said, what are you doing with it? He said, we're turning it into fabrics. It's quite interesting. I was working in the sports and entertainment industry, setting something up called the Icon Series, or scaling something up called the Icon Series that existed before I was involved in it, that kind of startup world. I saw quickly there's an opportunity to put some of the biggest athletes in the world who play in the Icon Series in an apparel brand. So that was going through my head. Pete came to me and said, I found a company that turns waste plastic into high performance fabric. I was like, I've been thinking about making a golf wear brand that I'm pretty sure I can get on some of the biggest athletes in the world. The two ideas came together, and being the type of people we are, we dug deeper into the idea of sustainability, something we were both super interested in, but maybe didn't really understand from a fashion or a performance wear perspective. So we spent probably the best part of 3 years really dialing down into what the problem is, and it became apparent that it's far more than just what the fabric's made out of. It's how it's made, where it's made. It is the supply chain and how things are shipped around. It's packaging. It's minimizing waste. And then also we wanted to create positive impact, which is where the tree planting thing came from. We spent around 3 years kind of working out what we want to be and how we want to be it. And then we launched 3 years ago. And it's been a pretty wild 3 years. We pretty early on had an interest from Harry Kane in the brand. He wore the clothing, loved it, and approached us and said, I'd like to see what we can do. So Harry invested in the business, which was pretty cool. And we've grown exponentially over those 3 years in kind of every way, from direct to consumer and our mainline range and our website through to our partnerships. And we're partnered with people like Nissan Formula E team, Jaguar Formula E team. We work with Forest Green Rovers, the most sustainable football club in the world, all the way through to big golf events like the Aramco Team Series and the Waste Management Phoenix Open, the Australian Open Tennis, all sorts of fantastic kind of big events around the world. So that's kind of us in a nutshell, and we're now at 3 years in, I think we're probably moving into scale up mode, which is fun.
I've just written down actually how you spoke about, I've got this idea where I can probably create a golf brand or a brand and get it onto the back of these athletes that are competing, but how quickly did it take for that to actually happen, for you to get your clothes onto an athlete?
So the Icon Series was actually, because it was, I worked for the Icon Series, still work for the Icon Series. That was probably I'd say 6-7 months into us existing as a business. So, pretty early days, we managed to do that. And that was our first acid test of what does a professional athlete think of these clothes. And the first, when I first saw Harry try it on in the media day, and he didn't know I had anything to do with Reflo, the first thing he said was, "What's this? What brand's this? I've not heard of this before." And I was like, "Oh, here we go. Where's this going?" And he's went, "I really like it. This is really nice stuff," and was super complimentary about it. And that's how we got into the conversation about what Reflo is, and he was loving it. So yeah, that was a pretty surreal moment in the grand scheme of things, being 6 months old and doing that. But like early doors, we worked with a golf YouTuber. We still work with him, Andy Carter, who is a absolute legend. We've been with us since we were conceptualizing the idea, and he was our, go and play. You are a scratch golfer. You've got a media spotlight. Go and play in this. Is it any good? And he's worked with us throughout. So, I would say Andy was as big a influence in a lot of what we've done as maybe some of the bigger guys or some of the bigger names that have worn it. And he is still, actively involved. And if you go and watch the Harry Kane trick shot video that came out at the start of the year on our Instagram page, the person he's doing the trick shot with is Andy Carter, which is quite a nice thing. Like the very first kind of athlete that we signed, and Harry, who was the latest athlete we signed at that time.
Yeah, I've seen on your social media channels recently, Harry Kane's been doing lots of talks, for example, like shoots and stuff. Mm-hmm. What's it like working with him, with the brand? I mean, like I'm a Spurs fan, so for me, like he's a hero, and I'd probably be a bit starstruck if I met him. But you're a sort of he's an investor of yours now.
He's a business partner.
He's
one of our business partners.
He's a business partner, an ambassador of the brand as well. And that must be a pinch me moment for someone to.
Sure.
You start a business 3 years ago, and you've got one of the most elite, well, probably in my opinion, the most elite footballer on the planet, but England captain, etc. That's amazing.
He epitomizes performance, right? And we're a performance wear brand. So it's incredible. He is like first and foremost just a great guy. Like I really enjoy spending time with him. I enjoy the approach he is involved. It's not just like an investment that he makes and doesn't, he's interested, and it's apparently he's interested, and he goes above and beyond, you as ever with these things, and you have, he has obligations to the brand to do X, Y, and Z, and it doesn't matter. He goes above and beyond. He does whatever needs to be done, be it, wanting to see product, testing product, giving feedback, which is always great because, we're a performance wear brand and he wears performance wear a lot, all the way through to kind of opening doors, making connections, doing shoots, talking about the brand. I've heard people say, "Oh, I saw, Harry Kane was with this person. I heard him talking about Reflo," and you're like, "That's cool. I like that."
Yeah.
So yeah, he's an absolutely part of the business, and then his wider team is part of the business as well. So the Harry Kane company are all pushing in the same direction. We've all got the same aim, which is to create positive impact through making Reflo as big as it can be. So it's great to have that, because it's normally I think you probably sign an athlete and you go and sign Ronaldo and spend millions on it, and he has these 3 set things he's got to do, and when they're done he's probably on to the next one, whereas that's just absolutely not the relationship that we have.
So he embodies the brand. This is his brand. Like it's he takes it, he wears it with pride, sort of thing, and he tells everyone about it.
Yeah, and he talks about it, and he doesn't profess to be an expert in sustainability, and he's not, but as he says, like in his words, look, I leave he says, I know that I want a better world for my kids, and I know that certain things have got to happen, so I want to work with people who have got a vision to make that happen. So if I can accelerate that positivity, then great. So he knows what makes great performance wear, that's absolutely for sure. He's an incredible golfer, and he loves his golf, and so he wears the golf wear a lot, and he is an incredibly well-connected, passionate guy, and he embodies sustainable performance. If there's someone who is been at the top of their game for a long period of time, it's him, and maybe a slightly different element of sustainability there, but he is the dream ambassador, investor. We're super lucky, and we're just we're doing more and more with him, so there'll be plenty more to see coming up.
Does he help with product testing? Because you said it's a performance wear brand. Mm-hmm. is wearing those, clothes on a daily basis as
Yep.
he trains, etc. So he knows what good performance in material feels like.
Yep.
Does he help on that?
Yeah, he gives his feedback.
Does he?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, gives his feedback if he feels something could be cut a bit different or the fabric doesn't perform as well as others. Yeah, but we ask for his feedback. It's like, I mean, it would never be unsolicited, but it's part of the process of like, what do you think of this? And we pride ourselves on the product just evolving and getting better and better and better and better, and that comes with more testing, more feedback, and he's part of that, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome to get that from a top level athlete. So that level of feedback is fantastic. But you've obviously focused a bit on partnerships, and you mentioned Formulary. Are you strategically targeting brands that are in the sort of the sustainable space?
Yeah, absolutely. We want to partner with people who believe in the same philosophies or ideas that we do, but also we can learn from each other, right? So what's been amazing working with, the Formula E teams, but not just the Formula E teams, they're other partners who also inherently have an interest in sustainability, then it's kind of a knowledge transfer as much as anything. We have partner days where we all get together, talk about what we're doing, how we're doing it, where we're innovating, where someone else is innovating. So yeah, I think it comes very naturally. There's a natural brand alignment there, for sure, with those two teams. There's two other teams that we're going to be announcing in Formula E fairly soon, but yeah, Nissan and Jaguar, it makes perfect sense. And to be, James Barclay, who's the team principal of Jag, sat with him pretty early doors, and he made it very clear that they wanted an alignment with Reflo because we stand for the same things, which means that we can have a conversation. When we started that conversation, again, we were a super new business, so if we didn't have that, then the door probably wouldn't have been as open to working with a giant brand, the world champions in Formula E. The first team you sign in Formula E being the world champions is pretty cool. But having this aligned philosophies really does make that conversation so much easier. It's not just a badging exercise. It's not, we want to put our logo on your drivers and your team. It's like, we want to get something more out of this. And specifically, we've developed something called Reloop, which is something we can, if you want me to now, I can go into more detail.
Yeah, let's go into it.
Let's hit Reloop. So it's the nuts and bolts of it are only getting announced as we kind of speak. We've been keeping it fairly under wraps, but let's take a look at the big issue in the sportswear industry, which isn't really talked about much. And then in the fashion industry, let's go even higher. Let's start at the fashion industry, that 92 million tons of fabric waste ends up being discarded every year. And that mainly ends up in landfill or being incinerated. That's a huge amount. Like, to contextualize that, that is around 7.4 million London buses worth of recycled plastic. Of plastic waste. Or not just plastic waste, fabric waste.
Is this every year?
Every year. Annually. That amount of fabric waste happens. And
wow.
And the sportswear industry is... Okay, so let's look at the wider picture. That is from the fashion industry, that's from all sorts, but actually the sportswear industry is a massive part of that. So if you were to look at most professional sports organisations, and even amateur sports organisations, every year need to change their kit. Commercially, they have to change their kit. They get new sponsors which need to be placed on kits, new designs. Kit sales is a part of their revenue stream, and that's never going to change, and it shouldn't be expected to be changed because it's the commercial lifeblood of football, of sports teams. So that's something that needs to happen. But if you look at a motorsports team, let's look at a Formula One team because it's the biggest in motorsport. Every year they kit out not only the drivers but all of the staff in the factory, in the HQ, of which there may be thousands, and all of those guys are wearing a kit which is only really usable for a year because it's got sponsors' logos on which change every year. And then if you consider the amount of staff that travel to each race, and they're probably on the road for a week, so they've got a different outfit, maybe 2 outfits per day, because they'll have something that for when they're traveling, something for when they're in the paddock, something. This tops up, and this becomes all of a sudden, before you know it, tens of thousands of units of apparel for just one team, which lasts a season. And then they get to the end of the season, the staff don't want to keep that kit because it's a taxable benefit. So if they were to keep it, they'd be taxed on the clothing that they've been given.
Right.
So they give it all back, and none of that clothing is recyclable. None of that clothing.
So when you say give it back, what do you mean?
Give it back to the team. So they'll go back to HQ. All of the kit. So the team will be left with tens of thousands of units of old apparel. What they're going to do? It's worn. It's been out on the. It's not brand new. It's not something that they could sell, and even if they did want to sell, where does it go? But then there's also the fan element of it. There are people buying thousands and thousands, but none of these things are recyclable. As soon as you, without going too technical, you combine two different fabrics, or you put certain logos on certain fabrics, that fabric is a blend of polyester and cotton, can't be recycled. That's end of life. So once it's finished with, it ends up in landfill or burnt. There aren't really many options. So we've developed a solution which is a fiber-to-fiber recycling system, which means that we can take back. First of all have to design clothes to be recycled. So we design all of the teamwear that we're working. So Nissan and Jaguar, 60% of their apparel for next year is fiber-to-fiber recyclable. The aim is that the season after it increases and increases to get to the stage where we can do it 100%. But it means at the end of the season, when everyone gives their kit back at HQ, we just take it back off them. And we take it back off them and we put it through our recycling process, which turns all of that clothing back into a pellet of recycled polyester. And that recycled polyester then can live another life. What do we want to turn that into? Another fabric? If it's a football team and they're building a new stadium, do you make all the seats, the plastic seats out of last year's kit? That would be quite cool. If there is a player of the season award, do you make the player of the season award out of the kit that the player wore in last season because it's what he sweat and bled and all that? So it's got that visceral feeling behind it. There are millions of options, but you are creating a closed loop recycling system, which, go back to that stat, 92 million tons of, sport is a contributor towards that. So with Reloop, we can take that, we close the loop, so we can take that back, recycle it, and then give that a new lease of life. And that's something which is a game changer. And I mentioned Nissan and Jaguar. We can talk about those because by the time this podcast goes out, the announcement will have gone out about all the detail there. So you're getting a bit of an exclusive. But we do have football teams, major football teams next year, who will have the world's first recyclable fiber-to-fiber recyclable football kit.
Because I see this. My girlfriend works for Premier League football clubs, or has done, still is, I guess. But when she goes on pre-season tours, she just gets given loads of kit, and literally it piles up. And now she changes clubs quite often as well, so she's got like multiple different sets of kits, but they are all still like under the bed, or like now they're in the charity shop, for example. But it is actually a problem. Like she doesn't give that back. It's like it's hers, and she has to find something to do with it. And it's either it goes into the charity shop, or it's sold, or it's destroyed.
Yeah, and that's the reality of it. And actually, even if you consider it goes to the charity shop and then it's worn by someone, and then what happens? Eventually, it will end up in landfill because there isn't an end of life solution to it. So Reloop is actually not just taking it back en masse. There's a QR code in the back neck of every Reloop product, which means at any stage, even if someone buys it from the Jaguar's website and goes, I love this, and then after 3 seasons they go, I want to get the latest kit, they can still scan that QR code and send it back to us, and we'll still recycle it. There's no time limit on that. So it's across the board for Reloop products. It's and it's all certified by the Circular Textiles Foundation. I often hear people or other brands talking about making recyclable products, but then when you say, well, how and where is it getting recycled, there's no answer. And so Reloop is something that is fully traceable, trackable, end to end, and we'll see it happen when we take that kit back. And that's why partnerships are great, because we can test that at scale. But it's legitimate. It is actually happening, rather than you can recycle that. Who and how? How does a customer then recycle that? Well, that's up to them. Right. Okay. Well, let's not. That there isn't really many places in the world where you can recycle fibers as a single customer.
Yeah.
Like if you were to someone else, are you going to do you even know if it's recyclable?
Yeah.
The answer is it's almost certainly not.
I wouldn't have a clue what is recyclable and what is not. It's not like you've got like your glass that you go and take into the bottle bank or whatever, and you put them in there. It's like what do you do with it? I see cloves as cloves, so they go into the cloves pile when they go to the charity shop or wherever they go. But where did your inspiration come from? Who was it? Your idea to do Reloop, or was it a team idea? Was it your business partner's idea?
So the idea originally came from, I talked about hiring people who know more than we do. One of our product team said, I think we should be looking more at end of life. We're making things out of recycled waste, but then what happens to it once it's discarded? We're like, that's a really good point. So we developed Reloop initially as a mainline thing. So actually they're products that you can buy from our website now, which are Reloop. And it's for a customer, it's for the end user. But very early we realized actually the best use case for this is doing it at scale with sports teams solving a big issue. So whilst it's important for our mainline range and it's something that we're rolling out more and more, our latest season has 7 products that are Reloop in there, and the previous season was 1, and the next one goes to 15. We realized that we were able to solve a big issue that exists in the teamwear industry very quickly using the same philosophy. So whilst the initial idea came around through Gemma, big up Gem, but it didn't come around with the initial thinking of let's turn this into a sportswear thing, into a teamwear thing. But it very quickly moved into that, and that's the joy of being in a startup as well, is that you go, right, let's pivot it, let's change the narrative here, and let's take this to some people we think might be interested. And Formula E teams naturally were interested, and since then we've taken it to football teams, and they've been interested. But it's back to the original question that sparked this entire conversation. You need to find a partner who's willing to do it alongside you, and take a risk at the end of the day. Moving into Formula E for the first time is a risk for a Formula E team, because we've not done it for a Formula E team. Moving into football for the first time, even though we're testing it in Formula E and it's been done and it'll then be rolled out into football, is a risk for that football team. So they have to have the philosophy that you want to do. And we've sat around with commercial directors of football clubs, and if the first point and first conversation is how much money are you paying us, we know we're in the wrong meeting, and we'll very quickly say, go and speak to, there's a few other sportswear brands which I think I won't mention them, but if you just want some money thrown at you and you want a football shirt sponsorship, there's a brand that you should go and speak to that exists out there, but it's not us. We want to approach this differently. Let's approach it by fixing a problem, and it will be commercially viable. Don't get me wrong, we do great commercial deals still, but if it's just a check on the table and you don't want to go into the depths of what we want to go into the depths of, then it's probably not the partnership for you. And fair play, actually that's probably only happened twice in the last conversations we've had. Most clubs are interested, and most sports teams are interested.
But sustainability is becoming a much bigger issue, and therefore, and maybe you can talk about some of the numbers as well, as in terms of what's the environmental impact. I don't know the numbers, but it's front and center of political debates at the moment. In the UK, for example, we're talking about is it COP29 and all these different things. All of these pledges that we have to be more sustainable from an energy perspective, but it also comes down to it's all to do with the planet, right? It's all to do with how much harm we are emitting, and how do we try to scale that back. And there aren't many companies out there, from what I understand, who are doing something like you're doing. And I wrote this down actually as we were talking, because you mentioned single-use plastic. Now, I'm not going to mention the brand, but I've been trying to be a bit more sustainability conscious recently. And I was trying to buy dishwasher tablets. I was like, that's an interesting place, because everyone seems to be wrapped in something. And so I was looking, and I looked at sustainable and organic and those things. Despite having sustainable in the name, the box that these dishwasher tablets came in, inside that, each dishwasher tablet, and maybe there are 100, was individually wrapped in plastic. Now, how can you have sustainable in the name? And this goes back to those bigger brands. We won't name who they are, but I bought this top, for example, paid for by me. It's thank you. I'm not endorsed to say this or anything, but I bought this. It comes in a completely biodegradable bag. Whereas you go to one of the bigger brands, and it literally every single thing, no matter if the bag is a big bag because you've bought 5 items, every single top will be contained in a plastic wrapper. And it actually just begs the question, like you're going into those conversations with these big brands and saying, like, we want to do partnerships with people who believe in our philosophy, and you're partnering with people who also have that same philosophy. Money isn't the objective here. It's about doing good.
Yeah, and there has to be an element of profitability,
Of
right?
course, yeah.
Of course, but it's, 3 Ps: people, planet, profit, in that order. And the first 2 you look after, the third will hopefully come. But you're right. I mean, the amount of greenwashing that we see is laughable at times. I saw a brand go big into a sustainable product they'd launched, which was is a really cool idea. A huge sporting event. One year they collected all the plastic waste from it and they recycled it. Brilliant. We love that. And turned it into a fabric, and they, similar to the process that we use, and they made the shirts in the merchandise tent for it next year. And I was at that event, and I was like, cool, I'm going to buy one of these because this is brilliant. I love it. Good. I love people doing sustainable things. And I bought the shirt, and it came in a plastic bag, and the shirt was clipped to a piece of card with 7 individual plastic clips. So in doing what they're doing, they'd actually created 8 pieces of single-use plastic. And I was like, this hasn't been thought through. This is greenwashing. This is sustainability for a marketing tool, if ever I've seen one. And there's a phrase that we use all the time, which is McDonald's makes salads, but it doesn't make them a health food store. So whenever we see the big brands talk about sustainability, and thankfully the EU is starting to regulate false sustainability claims. And again, I don't want to get in an argument with one of the biggest sportswear brands in the world, but 2-3 years ago, one of the big sports brands used sustainability as a big focus. It was everywhere. It was on all of their packaging. It was on all of their conversations, and it gradually has just gone a bit quiet. And I wonder why that's gone quiet. And it's because they had a class action lawsuit against them for false sustainability claims that they lost. And quite funnily, and again, I'm not going to mention names, a very senior person at this business for a while decided that they were going to start commenting on all my LinkedIn posts. And they, kind of passive aggressively saying, well, at X company, we don't even talk about this anymore because the customer just expects it. Why is everyone celebrating this brand so much? And on my personal LinkedIn posts when I was resharing stuff, and I was like, this is mental. And a lot of friends were like, are you going to engage with him? And I said, no, absolutely not. I'm just going to let him, he's probably, he's, he is pretty, and we were like a year and a half old at this stage.
He's trolling.
It's not even trolling. It's just, it's not an incredibly intelligent thing to do. It's like, why are you so, you are from this multi-billion-dollar company. Why are you going after this, startup? But he stopped, and the reason he stopped is because, again, someone I actually don't know, the person commented on one of his comments with a link to X brand sued in class action lawsuit for self-sustainability claims, just saying "this you?" with a link to the article, and it got more likes than the guy's comment, and I was just like, that is absolutely fantastic. Whoever, I can't even remember who the person was, someone I've never met before, and I just round of applause in my living room for that.
Yeah.
And then he miraculously after that decided to stop just going after me. So and it's just a perfect example of, I think in his head he actually thought they were doing really good, amazing stuff, not really realizing that they're just using it as a marketing tool. So there's lots of greenwashing out there.
How do you, as the founder of a business that is trying to grow, and I'm sure that maintain profit margins and all these sorts of things as you're growing, how do you avoid falling into the same trap of, as costs increase or whatever, going down that same pathway, which is like being in plastic wrapping and that sort of stuff?
I think there's a few. I mean, it's built into our DNA. It's like every decision. It's almost inherent now, with everyone who joins the business as well knows the first question to ask is, well, what's the most sustainable way of doing this? Which is a nice thing. But you've got to balance sustainability with commerciality, of course. And you can't, we are a private business. We are still, trying to be profitable. We're still trying to make money. So this is like when I talk about Reloop and why Reloop's interesting, because it's still a commercial solution to, the best solution from an environmental and sustainability perspective is that teams don't change kit every year, and they don't change sponsors every year, and everyone just wears the same thing year in, year out. And it's like, that color, that team is the red team and they just wear red, and that's that. That's not realistic. That can't happen. So it's about finding commercially viable solutions. So that's kind of where we sit in. It's like, we got to be commercially viable with it. And we will innovate and we will think harder, but we will say no to things as well. We have said no to things. a huge sustainability conference, and again I won't mention who they are, came to us and said, we'd love you to do the apparel for all the event X, Y and Z. We're like, okay, cool, that's interesting. And then we went through it, and then the questions they were asking us to hack away at pricing. And one of our things is working with factories that pay people fairly. They're like, well, someone is quoting us this amount for that. It's like, the person who's not been paid fairly in that entire ecosystem is the person making that shirt. Then the only way they can achieve that is by making it and paying someone not fairly. That's the only, we know exact breakdown of what it costs to make that. And that's where you save the money. And we're not prepared to do that. And they were like, we really want to use X, Y, and Z. And actually we said, thank you, but we're out. We're not interested. Go and use the company that you want to use, because actually we believe fundamentally your heart isn't trying to make decisions around sustainability. And if your entire business decision is based on bottom line, and you're, quite aggressively challenging us on stuff, that means that we'd have to sacrifice something that we stand for. We're not prepared to sacrifice it, and the easiest way to deal with this now is just to say no thanks. And so we did. We just said, look, and then they came back to us, oh no, we want to try and get something done. And we're like, look, sorry, it's not for us. Thank you.
Does that then mean that your pool of potential partners, customers, etc., is smaller?
Yeah, I'd say it probably is, but ever increasing. It's we haven't touched the sides of it yet, so it's not like we're worried about market size. Market size is infinitely, it's not infinitely, but the market size is huge in what we do, and we've kind of only really just started to walk around in it. So yeah, it would be, and there will be partnerships that we probably will never even get a sniff at, because it's not commercially how we'd want to skin it. So yes, but there is enough out there for it to play quite happily in.
Yeah, and because I asked that question in terms of the partnerships, but then the end consumer, I'm assuming that number is ever growing, because more people are becoming more environmentally conscious, but also regulation, for example, changes. Does regulation become a threat in the sense that if regulation came in, then all of the big players have to then start changing the way they operate, and then because they have vast resources, that means that they're able to still maintain their market share, but in a more sustainable way?
To an extent, but I think even the regulation that we're seeing is the bare minimum. It's not to an extent that we already do things. And in fact, before the EU regulation around sustainability claims came out, we had a long chat internally to try and predict what they may be. And myself and our head of product, went to Drapers, which is the big industry kind of fashion event. They're actually a publication, but they had a big event, the sustainability conference, and the big talk. Everyone was slightly panicked, and you've got all the big guys in the room, like every big brand, every high street retailer, everyone kind of going, when this comes out, and we'll have 5 years to react, and 5 years to react for a big company isn't that a big amount of time. 5 years for us is older than we are as a business, so that's not particularly. We were going, are we gonna be in trouble here? Are we gonna find something that we've got to change? And we just didn't know. No one knew at that stage, but there were plenty of people in the room who were quite disparaging about it. And actually, one of an MP came along who was involved in the steering committee before the Brexit and X, Y, and Z, but knew a lot of what was to come. And people were quite aggressive with that person, saying, the effect you're going to have on X, Y, and Z. And then the regulation came out, and we were doing all of that stuff anyway. So we were like, okay. So we aren't too concerned. But at the end of the day, we're not sitting still. We're not going, what we do now is what we'll be doing in 5 years' time. We're all about innovation, changing the game, doing things differently. We were talking about it before, but we've just developed a fabric from recycled electric vehicle batteries, which no one's done just yet. So our autumn-winter collection, mad as that sounds, autumn-winter 25, that far ahead.
Is that what you're thinking about now?
It's designed. It's all the samples are made. We're selling that right now into retail. So we're selling these products right now. We've got a waterproof jacket, a bucket cap, and some golf club head covers. They're all made from recycled electric vehicle batteries.
How? What's the process for recycling electric car batteries?
There's certain parts of it, obviously, that you can't recycle, that are are pretty toxic.
Yeah.
And we leave that to the kind of the specialists in that kind of space. But traditionally what's happened is the car battery, just the whole thing has been thrown away. It's like, right, the whole thing is unusable. But actually a huge amount of components are recyclable. So it's about stripping it down, working out what's on there can be recycled and stripping that down. And we haven't been able to make the fabric something that you'd make a hoodie out of. It just is that's not possible. But it's a great membrane and a waterproof jacket. So it is waterproof because it needs to stop the transfer of things between it.
Of course, naturally.
Naturally, yeah. So we're like, okay, well, let's make a great membrane of a waterproof jacket from it. And that's what we've created. So yeah, that is... It's crazy. It's a mad product. It's called the Energizer range. I'm telling you products that are coming out in a year's time here, but
we're gonna have to have like exclusive on
exclusive,
the thumbnail,
yeah, or beep it out like embargo till 2025. But that's just an example of like always thinking ahead. And when you say where are you now, we're actually in design of spring summer 26 right now, and we are developing all sorts of weird and wonderful fabrics and innovation that can go into there, and part of the theme of that is carbon capture and how can we use clothing as a carbon capture tool.
Wow. Whose responsibility is it to be thinking about these things? Is it the whole team? Is it you guys as the co-founders? Who is creating? Because you are the owner of the business, you are constantly thinking about the business.
Yeah.
But where do these ideas generate from?
They originate probably from the product team. And I include myself in the product team. Part of my role is I head up the product team. I'm not head of product. We have a head of product, but it falls under kind of my remit. So between us, we're always looking to innovate and always looking to storytell. And I think storytelling is so important because sustainability is quite dry, and if not told in the right way, can be quite confusing. So we're always looking for things that we can build a narrative and a story around that allow people to simply understand what we're doing, which is why when we talk about, if you go on our website, there's 3 stats which pop up straight away, which is the equivalent of plastic bottles recycled, the amount of trees we've planted, and the amount of carbon that we've reduced. And they're 3 things that most people can get their head around because they're tangible, they're physical. What's interesting is we don't just recycle plastic bottles. So people was like, oh, that's made out of recycled plastic bottles. It's not actually. It's made out of all sorts of plastic waste because sometimes we take industrial carpet scrap, sometimes we take household consumer waste. We take anything that's destined to be thrown away and recycle it. But by using an equivalent of of bottles, it's really easy for someone to get their head around. So we're constantly trying to find ways that we can tell an interesting story. Vehicle batteries is a really interesting story, and creating capsules. Reloop is interesting because it's recycling and being able to attach it to sport, and people love sport. Sport's a great vehicle to tell stories. So, that's brilliant for us. And then some of the things that we've got coming up is like, right, what does the story around this collection of clothing say? What is it? And why are they doing it? And okay, I get it, and it's a bit more interesting to understand it in a certain way than it would be to just talk purely about, carbon offsetting or something like that. Yeah,
there was one of the guests. You may even know him. He works for a company. He's actually got acquired by a company called Playfly.
Okay.
Do you know Playfly?
I don't think I do.
But he actually said storytelling is that's where his biggest value add is as a business. It's helping the brands to tell stories, particularly in like the sporting world and data and that sort of stuff. Are there any other sort of ROIs that you've had in your business where you've gone down a certain avenue? Because part of this, I want people to be thinking about, if they are creating businesses or entrepreneurs, like thinking outside the box. Are there any other things that you've done where you've where it's had like an outsized return on investment for what you put into it?
That's a great question. I'd say where we probably end up over delivering on ROI is when we over deliver for clients at what we're good at, and then they come to us and say, well, what else can you do?
Yeah.
And so, like, as much as we're an apparel brand, we're also a service business.
Yeah.
When we're looking at things like that. So one thing that we get asked a lot, more and more, is what's the most sustainable way to do this thing, to do something else? You guys know, because you guys are at the forefront of sustainability. So how can we do that in a better way? And so there is something that we're cooking as part of the business now, which is a solutions business within Reflo that can do that we can go into any event in the world and say, by the way, we've discovered a company that can do this, this and this, and this is how, you know, from an apparel perspective, we can deliver that for you. But let us bring our friends along with us who will teach you how to do this, 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 or change this, this, and this. And we can offer you a turnkey sustainable solution. Because that's, in reality, what a lot of these guys want. They want to make better sustainable choices, but they don't necessarily want it to be more difficult. And we aren't more difficult. When I talked earlier about saying, you know, we'll get under the bonnet and dig around and find out ways to be more sustainable and do things better, we can do that. But some people just purely go, well, I'm going to go and buy 1,000 polo shirts for my event. I could buy them from Reflo and they are a more sustainable option. They're recyclable. They plant a tree for every product that they've sold. All of a sudden, I've made a really great big positive impact by doing that. Why? It's a no-brainer. Why wouldn't it? It costs the same amount as going and buying another brand's polo shirt. It doesn't change that. So when we kind of often enter the door in that scenario, oh, we could do this. And then they go, oh, so can you do this, this and this? And we'll go, well, we can't, but we know the people that can. Or we will source it for you and we'll deliver it for you. And that's because we're trusted. You know, we've got a credible voice. It's because we over-deliver. We embed that into every single person within our team, is go above and beyond and over-deliver for every partner that we have. And, you know, and then people then will come to you with more things. We've had, you know, someone was like, do you do power banks? And we're like, well, it's not our core business, but actually we found a company just because we like other sustainable brands that make their power banks out of old line bike batteries, because when a line bike dies, the battery is generally still okay. It's just the rest of it. And then the outer is made out of recycled plastic. And so their entire power bank is made out of recycled components. So we're like, these guys do though, like, use them. And they were like, oh, brilliant, thank you. And so we provided them for those and all sorts of things like that. So I think, always over deliver, always be as helpful as you can, and then that's my high ROI tip, because what you may think is your piece of the cake can quickly expand.
Yeah, the moment you said service, I'm just like, oh my, like the penny dropped for a moment, because when you think about you're an apparel brand first and foremost, so most people think buying clothes gets sort of shipped to you. In their heads, that is quite a straightforward process, but actually. And like service is something that, working in the wealth management industry like me, is just like, it's day to day, like it's all about service. But when you are a product, my mind wasn't actually there, but you're absolutely right that if you can, your USPs are the product, but then also, as everybody knows, it's about delivering a high service, and that should never ever not be the case. Never like lose sight of your customers or your partners or whatever else, because otherwise they do go elsewhere if they're not receiving a good enough experience. We know that because the number of like internet broadband companies that we've moved on from over the time. So it's actually interesting hearing you say that for an apparel brand as well.
And retention, right? Retention is it should be easier to do than acquisition. And acquisition's expensive. Going and constantly pitching for new business and going, I'm talking like, often this is like B2B scenario side of the business, not just the business consumer side, but even the business consumer side. Like, we want someone to buy something off reflo.com and go back and want to buy more stuff. And they will only do that if they have a good experience.
I actually read this in a book recently, and the guy was brought in and he thought that he had performed successfully in his role because he had delivered like another £100,000 or dollars in profit. And the CEO turned around and said, actually, that was not a good idea, because whilst you have sold items, what your solution doesn't do is no one at the moment is thinking about introducing this brand or this company to somebody else. And I guess that's also such an important thing. Word of mouth marketing is so much more powerful. What you want someone to be able to do is either like use the service and then go and tell their friends about it, not just use the service, pay for it, and never use it again, or don't tell anybody about it.
Page number 2 of our induction for new employees is that we want to be a brand that people are proud to wear, proud to work for, and proud to partner with. And that only comes from offering good experience. And that's a super strong word for us that we use, proud, all the time. But that as a statement is a constant thought. It's like when we're recruiting people, people are proud to work for Reflo, and we love that. But it's also means that other people want to come and work for Reflo because they come from an industry, they tell all their friends, I've just started working for this new company. It's completely different than than any company I've ever worked for in my life. Like, you know, we have a genuine care of people, you know, and yeah, I mean, that in itself is, you know, when someone's proud to wear your product, they talk about the fact they're wearing it. If they're in the gym and someone goes, "Oh, I've not seen that brand before, what is it?" You want them to say it's Reflo, and it's great because X, Y, and Z. And the same with a partnership. If you're working in the sports industry and you sign a team and they've really enjoyed working with you, they will know plenty of other people in the sports industry and recommend you. And so it's the same with staff as well. And, you know, all of those things are about creating experiences, and those experiences have to be fulfilling for people, because if you're fulfilled by it, then you're proud of it, and then you talk about it. So it's a core fundamental, and we wrote that. And in fact, actually, when we wrote, we wanted to be a brand that people are proud to wear and proud to work for really early, before we'd even launched. Me and Pete wrote that as part of our manifesto, if you like, whatever it is, super early doors. But we'd never, and until we really got into the partnership space, when we were finding there's a huge demand for what we do in the partnership space, we were like, actually, and we had a high retention rate and customers love working with us. We're like, oh, actually, just by default of the way we operate, people are proud to partner with us as well. So that actually came last year. We included that, and it just felt natural. But yeah, we want anyone to be associated with Reflo to be proud that they're associated with it.
How do you, as the business owner, create like values and stuff for the business?
It comes down to kind of personal preference, if I'm honest. As in, like, as mad as that sounds, and that's changed a little bit, but it was something that was super dialed into mine and Pete's mindset and philosophy when we were building this. It was like we almost wrote the values and we wrote the core pillars of the business before we'd even developed a product.
Really?
Because we knew that we wanted to be different. And I don't think we realised at that time maybe quite how toxic the rag trade, as it's called, is. Like, we had no idea because we'd never worked in it, and we now see that it is, and people were, you know, work to the bone, and it's you know, it's not a nice place to work, and us changing that is super interesting. When we was with Ad, who's one of our garment technologists, and, you know, I won't say Ad's age because I'll be polite, but, you know, he's been working in the industry for 30 years, and he came to the awards ceremony on Tuesday where we won, and it was nice to spend some time with him and have a chat with him. And he's like, I've never worked for a company like this. And for me, that was one of those moments where I sit back and go, oh, that's pretty cool. Like, because you don't really think about it, because we built what we think it should be, but actually turns out a lot of companies aren't like that. So yeah, it came quite naturally, and Pete drives a huge amount of that. Pete's like hugely into developing a company culture. I'm not saying that I'm not, but, you know, when you talk about the delineation of tasks within the business, you know, that side of things. And we've just brought in, you know, one of our hires, probably hire 22, I think it was, is a people and culture manager. And, you know, in the interview process, she was like, not many brands within their first 25 hires will hire a people and culture manager to drive that. Why are you doing that? And it was like, well, because we should do, right, everyone. And, you know, then it cascades down. Like, let's talk about like actual things that we do for people, because it's all well and good talking about having a great company culture, but often that company culture means that, well, we put, you know, 200 quid behind the bar on a Friday and everyone can get drunk. It's like, no, that's, you know, we have great social occasions, but it's actually the other things that you can do to create positive impact. So every single person in the business gets a day off a month to volunteer on something that they're passionate about, to go and give to community, to go and give, you know, go and coach sport, go and do something that that creates positive impact and they're passionate about. Everyone in the business gets unlimited access to counselling and therapy, and that we should treat mental health as the same way we treat physical health. So that's you know, that's something that we don't monitor. We get the bill at the end of every month, but we don't look at who's using it, why they're using it. It's like, right, it's up to, you know, that's super important to us. We fully remote, but we encourage people to meet up and have their autonomy to meet up when they want and do, you know, when they feel like they need to meet with their teammates. It's not like they have to go and get permission. It's like, cool, get together, do what you need to do. We do a company retreat every year. We just took 26 people to Dubai for a week, where we had an amazing trip of desert safaris at 6 a.m. in the morning, seeing the sunrise, dune bashing, all the way through to, you know, doing the Dubai, taking a boat out and having a bit of a boat party, but then also really deep diving into the business and what people are, you know, listening to what people want. So again, it's like, you know, that's a really nice thing to do, but it does without layers of actually listening, understanding, and fostering people and giving people the opportunity, then that standalone isn't culture, but that as part of something is a culture.
What you said there is very interesting about getting people together and taking them on the boat party or whatever. How many new ideas, innovative ideas, came out of that time that you spent together?
A lot, but it's interesting actually that trip we kind of we gave it a theme, and the theme was almost optimization. It's like we've scaled. There were 3 people on that trip who were basically, it was their first week in the business, which was quite, and fair play to them. They stepped up of meeting. There were people on that trip who had never met each other face to face.
Really?
And there were people who had worked in the business for a year and hadn't seen each other since but not because they didn't want to, just because we live in different parts of the world, right? So it was amazing to get people face to face. But yeah, there was a theme, and that was like optimization, bringing some method to the madness. And so whilst I think probably one of the key takeaways is we needed more creative sessions. We had creative sessions. We had like motivational speakers come in, and we did some more creative stuff. It was, when we were working, it was like, how do we use this time all together to build process and understand how, which sounds pretty dry and boring, but it wasn't. It was much needed. It came at the perfect time.
It might sound dry and boring, but in that sort of environment, probably takes off all the pressure. It's not like you're sort of like in a room, right, ideas now. Yeah. It's, you're there relaxed, having fun, meeting new people, and company supporting it, which everyone's happy about that, right? Yeah,
exactly. And we did, I think one thing we took everyone down for paddle class. So we went play paddle tennis. We brought some coaches along, and one thing that everyone is now keen on, that we are a team of ultra competitive paddle players, and everyone loves it. So
have you got a paddle line yet?
Yeah. We make paddle wear. So yeah, reflo.com, get some paddle wear. But yeah, I think that kind of just to take a step back, like culture can't be forced, and it's not individual things that make the culture, it's the sum of its parts. And even using the word culture sometimes can feel a bit forced, and it's like we're not trying to create a cult.
But also I think some people, I had a guy sat in front of me here, he said that when he first created the company, the culture they created, or like the words associated to the culture, he'd basically stolen from like the Hilton or something like that. He'd just seen them and like, oh, they sound like good words.
That resonates.
And hadn't really thought about it. What is it that we believe in? And that's why I was asking the question there, like where does it come from? How do you generate those ideas? Because this is part of growing a business. You have to start thinking about all these things. As you say, you've got like HR, and you've got the people, managers, and not a lot of people that have been on the podcast so far are maybe like solo founders, or they're growing. So it's about how do you go through those next phases and start thinking about all these things, because they're really important. And if people don't understand what the culture is, if people don't understand what the values are, then people lose, like they just sort of navigate through the sea, like not really knowing where they're going. It's like, so you have to have those core pillars, and from the sounds of it, you guys have got a real good understanding of what is expected. Like you said on like the induction manual, you've got what you're proud of. When people come into the business for the first time, they know what to expect and what's expected of them, I'm sure, as well. Is that right?
For sure. And that's we want to create the best working environment possible. We want to give people every opportunity in the world, but we all work really hard. Like it's not, we're creating an environment where there's no expectation to work hard. Of course there is, because that's how we have an amazing team of people that do work hard, but you need to give people the tools to when we're not crazy busy, then you can take some balance it and create the balance in your life, and understand that life is, we're not saving lives here, right? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, through what we're doing, we may well be, but we're not doctors and nurses, and that life, family, certain things come before. And also, if you manage your own time, we're fully remote. In the summer, I know for a fact a few of the boys might be offline for a little bit. They don't need to tell me they are if they're, everything's in. They'll probably be at the driving range, making the most of, some lunchtime quietness where it's a bit quieter there, and but they'll go and make up the hours somewhere else, or whatever. It's like there's no pressure there. It's not like micromanagement. Where are you? What are you doing?
But do you say that if you're going to the driving range, you've got to wear Reflo?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. If I found out they were the driving range and not wearing Reflo, I'd be furious. I mean, everyone gets free Reflo clothes, so there's no excuse to not be wearing Reflo. The other funny thing is golf is is a sharp point of ours. I say it's not like we're well known in the golf space because we're doing something very different in the golf space, and some of my background being in the golf industry has meant a lot of doors have opened very quickly in the golf space. But people come into the business having never played golf before, and we don't play golf. It's not like something when we all came to Dubai, no one played golf. We played paddle tennis. We went for a run. We did other team building stuff, but golf wasn't on the list. It's not like, but people just kind of find themselves a bit drawn to it because they then become around there. Like our marketing director, Ollie, it was his birthday yesterday. I was like, "What'd you get for your birthday?" And he's like, "I asked for golf clubs," and he doesn't play golf. So now he's got the bug. I've been around it. It seems to be
until he starts playing.
Yeah. Oh God, and then he'll hate it. So I mean, I love that, and I love the fact that people are starting to get really into paddle, but maybe not have thought about it before. Is like what we're doing maybe inspires you to try something new and different. Like that's cool.
What's the next sport that you're trying to break into?
Football. We've signed 2 football teams for next year. I can't say who they are, but they'll be wearing the world's first fiber-to-fiber recyclable football kits in the 25-26 season, which is pretty epic. So that's like the specialist kit, as in like what they're wearing on field, but actually, we try and say we make multifunctional apparel. So some of the other stuff, some of the training stuff, we encourage them. If you're going to train in that kit, you can also wear it in the gym. If the players are going for a run, wear it for that. So yeah, it's but that's super exciting. I can't say too much, but we're working on we're talking. It's different. It's the same sport, but we're working on developing the world's most sustainable golf club with a golf club brand as a partnership, which will be pretty cool.
Epic.
As a part, hopefully that'll be something that could go live potentially next year. But I think we're really in not try and do everything. We already do quite a lot if you consider like the verticals of product, as in like golf, paddle, training, running, football coming into that, teamwear. That's already quite a lot of things to do. And then if you consider we have a B2B side of the business, we've got a direct to consumer side, we've got a wholesale side where we sell to retailers, we've got the partnership side. We're already doing loads. So I think staying good at those and not trying to do too much too soon. We had an opportunity to sign a cricket team, which would have been a very interesting and profitable deal for us. And we're like, do we have the bandwidth to go and service cricket properly right now? Probably not. So let's push it back a year. So there's a big focus on growing what we're good at right now and what we're doing well now, rather than just biting off even more than more than we can chew.
From the sounds of it, it's been an amazing year for Reflo.
Yeah,
and a very exciting 2025 coming up, and it's just really cool to see what you're building because, as I say, this is part 2 that we've done of this on the podcast now, and to see how much has happened over the last 12 months is amazing. And you're the first guest to come on twice, and actually this is becoming like I actually love to see the evolution of it as well, because most of the people that I'm chatting to are earlier stages, are younger people, and I'm just excited to see what's coming next. Like we're going to start seeing, as we see it on the football field, as we see it more in the golf courses. I'm seeing it more online. By the way, the social media marketing is amazing.
Love it.
Because I'm being targeted like regularly now. It's always popping up on my like Instagram feeds and stuff.
Love that.
So yeah, I'm just excited to see how it's going to grow, what's coming next for the business, and hopefully we just start seeing more and more of it. I'm just excited to see a Spurs team wearing it one day.
Hey, never say never. Never say. As a Southampton fan, I'm also wanting to get Saints in it. Hey, nothing is impossible. Shoot for the stars. I wouldn't say that's. I mean, there's absolutely no conversation happening there, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility.
Yeah, we're going tonight anyway, so we can maybe put some feelers out.
We are. We'll shout out to Dan Levy.
Yeah. But yeah, mate, it's been a pleasure to chat to you. And actually, looking at the time, we should probably start getting onto that match soon.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for having me, mate. I mean, it's you've put up with me talking at length about it. As you can probably tell, I could talk all day. It's something I'm super passionate about. So thanks for having me on. Love it.
Yeah. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.